the presentation here too.
Steve, do you want to open up the call? Welcome, everyone.
Tori, I see a bunch of participants still joining. What would you like us to do?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and say welcome, everybody. I'm happy to say welcome everyone to the HPE GreenLake on-premise consumption webinar here, hosted by Advizex and HPE. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. I think maybe, Steve, you're right. Maybe just give everyone just a couple more minutes to join here and we can go ahead and get started. I'll hand it off to you, Steve, whenever you want to open up.
Okay, all, thanks for joining. Obviously, there must have been a lot of traffic out there. That's why we're still waiting for people to join. Only a joke to start off here today. John, can you nod your head to make sure that everybody can hear me, sir? Thank you, sir. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining Advizex and HPE as we talk about a very important subject that we look at in the marketplace today in the industry trends on what we're looking at as far as consumption IT within hybrid cloud and or public cloud or private use cloud. So today we're going to talk about the economics behind the predictions within or predictability within companies. We'll also talk about how to manage cash flow. We'll talk about how to take a look at the monthly basis and the cost of what IT and how IT consumes business differently today. We could talk about governance. We could talk about the performance and the operations and security within a hybrid IT. We're also going to focus on the financial advantages of consumption IT with no upfront cost and committed pricing as you consume IT in the marketplace today. Our goal today is to talk about the financial acumen between Advizex, HPE, and obviously our client and customer base today. What we want to accomplish at the end of this call, Bruce will provide a summary and maybe some action items that each and every individual can pertain to. We're going to lead off the call today with Mr. John Dodge Hayes, talking from a financial perspective about the value of HPE and the consumption business with Advizex to our customers, no matter which vertical you sit in, no matter which horizontal you look in, and talk about the predictable economics around consumption IT. The goal today is from edge to cloud. It can all come to you in a predictive private use fashion. So that's what I have to say today. My name is Steve Cooker. I'm the VP and GM here at Advizex. I thank you for taking the time this afternoon in this all important matter. I think we will be recording, John. Maybe you may want to suggest that as you come off mute, just so everybody understands that this is being recorded. And hopefully you understand the financial flexibilities of a consumption model within an IT environment at the end of this call. At the end, we'll leave it open for any Q&A, but I thank you all for joining today. Thank you, John. Please kick it off, sir.
Steve, that was a great introduction. Thank you so much. And can you all hear me okay? Just want to do a little sound check. Everything good? Oh, that's excellent. Well, as Steve said, my name is John Dodge Hayes, and I'm a finance specialist specializing in analyzing kind of as a service kind of propositions that the IT industry's come up with over the years. I wanted to start by thanking Advizex for facilitating this. Hopefully you've all received these whiskey tasting glasses. And they were nice enough to send me one. It comes in a beautiful box that looks like that. And you get tumblers and these beautiful little cubes that have the Advizex logo on it. So you can always have that when you're tasting your whiskey. And the whiskey will be coming, I've been told. So I may look very young, but I'm celebrating my 40th anniversary of working in the IT industry this year. Actually, in July, it will have been 40 years since I got out of Grinnell College in the middle of Iowa and made my trek to Silicon Valley to start working for what was then called Digital Equipment Corporation, and my dream job there, and really love that. And I still love the industry that I work in. When I joined the industry in 1981, the PC hadn't been invented yet. There were Apple existed, Google did not exist. Most of the internet did not exist. Smartphones did not exist. And it's been one thing that has been constant through that whole 40 years is the incessant change that the industry produces. and that Gordon Moore, who was one of the founders of the industry in the Silicon Valley when he co-founded Intel, realized all the way back in 1965 this industry is going to reinvent itself continuously. So it's been fun to watch paradigm shifts happen in the industry over time. And I have to tell you, we're in the middle of one now. One of the things that I've really waited for that 40 years is for one company to really put together all of the different, what makes the IT industry different, and capture that into one offering for customers. And I honestly think that HPE has come the closest to that with this GreenLake service that they offer, and I want to tell you about it. And I got to tell you first that I'm not going to go real deep into finance. I love finance and working with numbers, and that's really kind of one of my hot buttons. But the whole presentation today is really more kind of common sense things. Is really, I want to leave you with an understanding of how the GreenLake service that HPE offers through Advizex takes advantage of three really essential key parts of the IT industry, and gives you an opportunity to save money, to have a better IT environment, to have a more flexible IT environment, and ultimately to have a more effective environment at a lower cost, and how it can do that. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So just kind of an outline of what some of the topics are I'm going to go through. I'm going to start kind of at a 10,000 foot level and talk about why as a service is interesting to vendors out there and customers, why it's kind of a hot topic right now. And a lot of that's driven by the public cloud too, and the success of Amazon and Google and Microsoft in offering public cloud services to customers. That's really helped transform the marketplace and accelerate this movement as a service as well. I'm going to get in specifically, and again, from a common sense kind of point of view, not deep in the finance numbers, but just how does GreenLake take advantage of the IT marketplace? How does it leverage it to generate value for you? And we're gonna drill down into three things in particular, kind of like a three-legged stool. It's easy to remember, and when you look at a GreenLake kind of and how it applies to your environment, you can think of that three-legged stool and how it maps to your specific situation. And I'm also going to talk about how some more unconventional things that HPE and Advizex can do with GreenLake to kind of expand the opportunity for you to, even be more effective. And then I'm going to hand it over to
Hey, John.
Bruce. Yeah,
John?
Go ahead. Yeah, Steve.
Sorry to interrupt here. I'm getting a couple chat messages that your screen is not highlighted. So it looks like I have a blank screen on there, and just your mouth is moving. So if you could highlight yourself as well as the PowerPoint, that would be great. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let me reshare the PowerPoint and see if that solves the problem, okay? Can you guys see me now? Waving?
Hey, John, I just made you the spotlight video, so we should be able to see you now.
Yep.
Okay.
You can put your presentation back on, and
right.
somebody had to control the spotlight. So you're there, sir. And now everybody can see yourself.
Oh no, that's dangerous. Okay, that sounds good. All right, everyone can see the presentation now? I hope.
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. I hope that's better and that solved the problem. So, and again, we wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to get together with us today. I hope that you'll find this really valuable. We've worked hard on this message and the service. It's been a 10-year evolution actually to get to this point, and we're really proud of that. So I will be bringing on Bruce Feldman to present after me, kind of really talking about more how GreenLake works and giving you some more information about that too. But I'm gonna take about the next 25 minutes and go through the information that I have here. Okay, so relax, get something to drink, and and if you do have questions, feel free to use the chat feature. And I think we're going to open up the mics at the end too. If you have questions, we'd be happy to answer those. So let me start by talking about why as a service is important to HP. Mainly because it's what we're hearing from our customers. And John Schultz is one of our key executives. He's our Chief Operating and Legal Officer. officer, and heads what we call our transformation office at corporate headquarters. And he was recently an interview with an expert kind of webcast in January, and summarized it by saying, you know, what HPE believes is this is what our customers want. They want to consume IT, not buy it. Some of this behavior, again, driven by the public cloud availability out there, that customers are telling us that they want out of the IT operations business, that they want elasticity, the ability to scale up and scale down, and pay as you go kind of flexibility, self-service, the ability to add capacity by yourself, to go to one dashboard and be able to see your whole environment and see what your utilization is and be able to add when you need it and take away when there's an opportunity to do that. So those are the messages that our executives are hearing from our customer base out there, and is one of the reasons that, you know, it's pushing us into, you know, really ramp up our offerings in that area. From a broader kind of market context, Scott Galloway at the Stern Business School at NYU is one of the thought leaders of this in the marketplace, and he's been pushing this idea of as a service really is more of a transformation that's happening industry-wide, that businesses mistaken choice is a good thing kind of overall, and that what consumers really want is less choice, but instead more confidence or more value in the choices that are presented to them. I think it's interesting. What I was most interested in from Scott Galloway was, if you look at him here and you look at John Schultz, I think they're the same guy, or maybe maybe it's Scott Van Pelt moonlighting in the finance industry. That could be, if you're familiar with him. In any case, that was my joke, Steve. An example of where HPE is taking this kind of marketing concept that Scott Galloway's put together, he calls his as a service approach a rundle, which is a recurring revenue bundle. And you can think of cable companies offer the same kind of thing. But what are we doing in the rundle area? HPE has put a rundle together around Splunk. If you are a Splunk customer, you're very familiar with this app. But it's an app used by, you know, in particular, the finance industry to index large pools of data out there. If you have archiving requirements and you've got to save data from all your customer transactions, finance records, that type of thing, you can accumulate up a massive amount of data very quickly, and you need the ability to search that. For example, in the finance industry, they do that anytime that a lawsuit might pop up, for example, to be able to go out and retrieve all of the data relative to that, a relevant lawsuit, for example. Splunk is really good at that. Splunk is notorious at consuming massive amounts of servers and storage infrastructure just in implementing the app to be able to search the big, you know, data lake that you've got. So HPE sat down with Splunk and developed an optimized tuned solution for them, in particular using Kubernetes, and their resulting platform as a service rundle that they put together is 17 times more efficient than the bundles that had existed previously, the configurations that had existed previously for Splunk. So it set a world record of being able to index nearly 9 terabytes in a day, which was a lot for a Splunk app. So and this is all available, you know, as a service, monthly charge. It's all, you know, pre-configured and all pre-tuned. In fact, the tuning of it is really the big value. But the key point is that this is a package that it's not just a bundling of existing services. It's the ability to bundle those services, make it easy to acquire for you, but add a ton of value at the same time. Bring the HPE lab, for example, in this case, and our technical experts and Intel and Splunk together to create something that was way more efficient than had been done before, and make it available very easily to you as a service. You don't have to acquire all this infrastructure to enable this capability for your organization. That's a value-added, you know, recurring revenue bundle. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots of these available with all kinds of different apps and all kinds of different value that's being added. And in general, an as-a-service kind of relationship with a customer is a different kind of relationship than HPE has had with our customers in the past. It really gives us the opportunity to focus on where can we add value, where can we make things more efficient and more effective for our customers, and create much more valuable services, and really add a lot more value to the relationship than we've been able to do in the past. It gives us a conduit to provide services to you that we didn't have in the past. You know, another reason why HPE and other companies are interested in this approach is the effect that having annually recurring revenue and that kind of service relationship with you has on the financial presence of the company, or the financial value of the company. I'm used CrowdStrike as an example here of a company that's built itself on rundles and annually recurring revenue. CrowdStrike, if you're not familiar with them, is a cybersecurity company offering security on the edge. Their wrinkle that they bring to this is using an AI tool to do it, a deep learning platform that they call Falcon, that sits out there on all the endpoints at CrowdStrike customers, and it learns as it's attacked, and then it shares that knowledge with all the other Falcon platforms out there in the world, kind of like Skynet would, you know, in the Terminator movies. But in any case, it's using AI to learn about the attacks as they're happening, sharing the information, and kind of becoming this smart living kind of platform, providing cybersecurity to organizations out there. From a financial standpoint, the vast majority, the way they go to market, it's subscription-based. Nearly 100% of their business is subscription-based, 91% in their latest fiscal year. They had 2020 sales of $481 million. This is a startup company, mind you. They haven't been around that long. They've got about $1 billion of cash on their balance sheet, so very strong, very low debt. You know, they're in really great shape financially. 308 million of cash flow in the most recent year, and they just became profitable. If you can imagine that, just in the last couple of quarters here, are starting to make money. Their annually recurring revenue growth has been pretty spectacular. At the end of 2020, they had about 600 million in annually recurring revenue on their books, and they're expecting that to grow to about $1 billion, or 907 million by the third quarter of this year, about $1 billion by the fourth quarter of 2021. So some really strong growth, 81% growth in that annually recurring revenue, in fact. Their current market value as a company, and mind you, they closed out their fiscal year with what? 481 million in sales. 481 million in sales. Market value of the company is $44 billion. Now, this is based on the stock price of $200 a share. Today, they're actually at over $220 a share. So they're about another 10% bigger than this, approaching maybe $50 billion in market value right now. And that share price has more than tripled since early 2020. It's gone from $57 to over $220 now. And, you know, I mean, we're taught to value companies as investors by looking at the profit the company's making and multiplying, you know, rule of thumb is multiplied by 18 or 20, you know, the PE ratio to put a market value on what the company should be worth. Well, how do you do that with a company that's not making money? The current favored way of doing that is taking their sales and then multiplying by some kind of factor. In the case of CrowdStrike, their current factor, it's 91 times their 2020 sales of 481 million. That is their market value. It's like almost 100 times sales. It's about 90 times trailing sales at this point in time. And that's effectively taking their growth rate and multiplying it by their sales to end up with a market value. And that's how many companies, it's not just CrowdStrike, but if you look down the list right now of the really hot companies out there, Fastly, Pinterest, Square, Amazon to some extent, Oracle, these companies are being valued more on sales times growth than profit times some kind of PE ratio. And HPE is quite aware of that, and we want to drive some of that valuation, you know, towards us as well. And if you apply this kind of logic to us, I mean, our current stock price is about $16, actually. Market cap's right around 20 billion as a company. And our annual sales are about $27 billion. We have a Green Lake, which is our annually recurring revenue business, ARR of $585 million at the end of 2020. And GL sales growth, Green Lake sales growth of 30% year over year. And actually, that's accelerating. We're expecting to hit nearly 70% worldwide growth. So if you calculate using the CrowdStrike logic, a market cap for HPE, what you end up with is just based on that annual recurring revenue of 585 million. This is a company or a business you would value at $13.67 a share, just on the ARR piece, not the other $25 billion in stuff we sell, just on the little piece of ARR that we have. In fact, the GreenLake ARR is larger than the CrowdStrike ARR, and CrowdStrike has a market value of over double HPE at this point in time. So that's what our execs are kind of looking at and saying, we really want a piece of that. This is where we want to go in the market, is really valuing companies that are offering services to their customers like that. From a customer perspective, another big thing that's happened more recently is the change to accounting practices around financing. And companies are looking for other options that are available to them. If you probably are aware, but FASB came out with a new rule, ASC 842, that was published in 2016 and then was implemented in 2019 and 2020. So it affects all of you at this point in time. But it was pretty revolutionary in that it redefined what a lease was, and that hasn't been done for years and years and years. So under the current accounting standards, a lease has these two attributes. If you have a contract that has an identified asset in it, and the control over the identified asset is in your domain, if you control it, then and this contract has a periodic payment associated with it, of course, then that by definition is a lease, and it needs to be on your balance sheet. All leases are on your balance sheet now under this new accounting approach. So companies used to use leasing. There were two kinds of leases previously, capital or / finance leases that were on balance sheet, were basically loans to acquire IT or other stuff. And there were operating leases that were where you're paying for the use of an asset. It's not on your books. And there were rules governing what was an operating lease versus what was a capital lease. FASB 13 was the name of that. And people use that to keep things off their balance sheet and improve their return on assets, for example, by not having assets that they were leasing, IT assets, on their balance sheet. Well, this ASC 842 really forced companies to go back and put everything that was under lease back on their balance sheet. So there really wasn't, or isn't at this point, an option for acquiring the use of equipment that's not on your balance sheet. That doesn't exist anymore, outside of the whole move to as a service. If you go get cloud services from Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, or GreenLake from HPE, now this whole spirit of this arrangement is different. The asset is fuzzy, so this identified asset piece here, is there an identified asset? The answer is kind of, but not really. It's open to interpretation. Control over use of the identified asset, a lot of the operation of the equipment, even in a GreenLake agreement, is done by the vendor. It's no longer necessary for you to do it. For example, in a GreenLake agreement, as Bruce will tell you, that basic operation, patching, the uptime of the equipment is HPE's responsibility to keep the stuff up and running and up to the latest patch levels and firmware, et cetera. That we take care of that. So some of the control is shared in those environments. But again, it's fuzzy. So you look at the two criteria of ASC 842, they're both fuzzy and there's room for interpretations. And I've worked with over 100 GreenLake customers now, and I can tell you the vast majority of them are treating GreenLake off balance sheet as a service. There's sales taxes not collected on GreenLake agreements, for example, property taxes not collected. So it works, the whole spirit of the agreement is done on a statement of work. There's no lease involved. So it's the whole spirit of the arrangement and the partnership is very different. And the vast majority of customers are taking advantage of that to treat it as a service. It's just a normal operating expense. It's not on balance sheet, and it's not a lease under ASC 842. So the impact of ASC 842 has been significant for some customers, for others not so much, but it certainly created a lot of new paperwork for everybody. So that's another thing that you can avoid by doing the as a service approach and take advantage of that flexibility. Okay, so two things in the industry that are kind of causing vendors to look at as a service, causing customers to look at as a service, and and outside of that, this GreenLake thing that HPE created, by itself, the thing that I'm most excited about is the way it taps into three essential features of the marketplace to really generate value and save you money. Let's talk about those. So I've talked about kind of the pace of change in the marketplace. I've been in the marketplace for 40 years, but it's been a continuous exponential curve of improvement. And the one really cool thing about, it's working in an industry where everything is changing all the time is exciting and never really gets boring. But it opens up the possibility that however you're doing something today, there's probably going to be a better way to do it a year or two down the road. And if you think about it, buying IT equipment is like the worst thing you can do. And I've always felt that way, that, you're buying something, if you're going to buy something and sweat the asset for 5 years, you're buying something that is changing at a pace where in 2 years it's obsolete and there's a better way of doing it that doesn't cost as much. How do you take advantage of that? This curve was recognized by Gordon Moore, as I said, all the way back in 1965 and is continuing on. Some people projected out to 2045. At that point in time, that's where the singularity happens, where the machines become as smart or smarter than us, develop consciousness, and we're all going to be chased by terminators at that point unless we do something. But that's just the nature of the beast. How does GreenLake allow you to take advantage of that? GreenLake statements of work, which is the way you acquire GreenLake, have built into them price bands. And I've got a little illustration of one here. This is a storage GreenLake agreement where, it's as a service. So instead of buying anything, you're buying it, on a per unit basis. It's all measured and metered. So you're paying for what you actually are using. And in this case, you start out in price band 1, this particular customer, at 5.09 cents per gigabyte. And, but as they grow and scale, the price in the GreenLake agreement drops into the second price band or the third price band. And the price per unit keeps getting less and less and less. And you can think of this as like in the marketplace as being able to go into the marketplace every year or two and get technology that's better, faster, and cheaper, and you automatically get the lower price. And this is part of the art of designing a GreenLake agreement for a customer really is working with you to figure out what do you really need today, and then, how fast are you growing, and setting up the price bands to match, pretty decent anniversaries. So like every year you could be growing into that next price band and getting a lower cost of IT, lower cost of price per unit on what you're using. And just that it keeps happening automatically each year, aligned with your growth. You don't have to grow, but if you do grow, you're automatically going to take advantage of the better and faster and cheaper nature of the marketplace. There's no other agreement that does that for you automatically like a GreenLake agreement does. This is all done up front, by the way. I mean, we're setting pricing in the GreenLake agreement for up to 5 years, and we're committing to a price per unit that gets, it gets less as you grow, but we're committing to that price. So what the price is going to be a year or 2 or 3 down the road as you grow and are able to take advantage of those higher price bands in the agreement, okay? The second leg of the stool is time value of money. And this is a key financial construct. Anytime you're looking and trying to compare buying something today versus spreading out the money over time, whether it's a lease agreement or finance or an as-a-service agreement or winning the lottery, do I take the payments all up front or do I take them over time? This whole concept of present value of money comes into play. And it's just based on the principle that money in hand is inherently more valuable than money in the future at some date. It's the old proverb that a bird in the hand is worth more than 2 in the bush. That's present value of birds. But present value of money, the formula for this was actually put down centuries ago by Euler. The future value, of a point in time, the amount of money that you would have from a present value is equal to the present value times 1 plus r to the nth power, where r is the interest rate or a rate of return, or we call it a discount rate often, and n is the number of periods, the number of years that have gone by. Conversely here, you can rearrange the equation here just a little bit, and the present value, or the value in today's dollars of something in the future is that future value divided by 1 plus the discount rate raised to the nth power. So you can calculate, you know, in today's dollars, if I'm going to get $100,000 3 years from now, what is that worth in today's dollars? Is it worth $100,000? No, it's probably worth 90,000 or 80,000. But you can calculate what it would be worth if you know how many periods are going by, and if you have a discount rate or a rate of return that you want to use in assuming that calculation. So the rate of return becomes a point of discussion in a present value calculation and time value of money. And the way to look at that rate of return is it usually is a blend of what you would pay to borrow money, which is really cheap these days, 1%, 0.5%. You know, it's really cheap to borrow money these days. But you also have to take into account if I'm saving money by not having to pay, for example, if I'm looking at a $100,000 IT project and my choices are to pay $100,000 right now or pay $20,000 a year for 5 years. Well, if I pay the $20,000, there's this additional effect of I've still got $80,000 in my bank account. I can do something with that. I can invest that in my business. I can invest that in another project, and I can get a return on that $80,000. I can make money on that money. And if I pay it all out up front, there's effectively an opportunity cost here of I don't have that money available to invest in other projects, and I can't get that return on that investment. So that's a return on working capital, ROWC kind of concept. And the other is a borrowing. And what we generally do when we talk to clients and we're trying to measure, you know, what a future value is in this calculation, to measure the time value of money, we use a blend of those two things. And we call it a weighted average cost of capital. It's a blend of borrowing rate and a blend on return on working capital, for example. Sometimes people use the returns they get from the selling their stock and what kind of return they typically get from that to blend into a return on working capital as well. Okay, but it's a basic financial concept. And if you're trying to compare buying something today versus or that lottery ticket, and you're not using a time value of money in the calculation, you're kind of ignoring a key financial concept that is, I mean, it's part of finance. It'd be like trying to build a house without a blueprint, or without the right tools, or deciding not to use a hammer. But you're going to build the house anyway, or maybe rounding to the nearest foot instead of using inches. But it's you're not using a key concept there that's required to really do it right, and not using time value money is taking a shortcut, and you're going to end up with not quite a correct answer in most cases. The other third leg of the stool here is using GreenLake to avoid what we call over provisioning. Been in the IT industry a long time, as I said, and I can say one of the truisms in the industry is people tend to buy a lot more than what they need. You know, maybe because they're going to buy it and they're going to sweat it for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and they want to make sure that they have enough to last, you know, in terms of capacity to the end of that. They don't want to have to go back to the well and get the budget approved and upgraded again. And GreenLake, because it's as a service and because it's metered and because he has his price bands, the other thing that a GreenLake agreement has is this change order process that's built into the statement of work that allows you to very easily add capacity as you need. Not only add capacity, but as better ways of doing things become available, which invariably happens in this marketplace, it gives you the ability to tap into those things as well. So it changes the game, really. Puts you in a position, instead of worrying about, am I going to have enough IT capacity to last 5 years? The question becomes, what do I really need today? I know that with GreenLake, I can easily grow it. I can scale it as I need to, and it's going to be better, faster, and cheaper because of the price bands to do that at the time that I need it than if I get it all today. That is going to work to save you money right out of the gate. We found working with our GreenLake customers, even teaching the principles of avoiding over provisioning and working with them to really narrow down the configurations that we initially put on GreenLake. There's still the GreenLake that we actually go out there and metered is still over provisioned. We could make it even tighter, and we could be even more aggressive about starting with what you really, really just need and then growing. It's undeniably going to be cheaper and better and faster to do it that way than buying it all up front. It just, that's the nature of the marketplace. It's just common sense. So there's a capacity to recognize a lot of savings in that too. So if you're certain what you're buying today is going to work better and faster and cost less in the future, why would you ever buy more than you absolutely need? I said that 11 years ago at the IT Leadership Academy down at University of Florida, Jacksonville, when I was a speaker there. So one of the things that I did for myself initially to just kind of keep this in perspective was I put together what I call a GreenLake Simple Savings Calculator. And we can make this available to you. It's no issue. It's just an Excel spreadsheet that captures all of these different concepts. The three-legged stool here. It allows you to, if you look at the upper left here, there's a CapEx purchase of $750,000, just for an example. This is looking at a 5-year kind of scenario where, you know, you can buy $750,000 worth of IT and sweat the assets for 5 years versus stick it into the GreenLake. And up at the upper right here, there's the start BOM capacity, start bill of materials capacity. That's how much you want to start with. Instead of starting with 100%, let's start with 50%. Whole different concept here. And with GreenLake, I said it's metered. There is, in addition to what you absolutely need, we always put in more. We call it the buffer in the GreenLake agreement. Bruce will talk more about these things. The other two things we need to look at our three-legged stool and see how it works is the annual price performance. That's at the upper right there. And that's the assumption about how the pricing of IT in general is improving on a year-to-year basis because of the price performance curves that we looked at and talked about. And the final thing we need is over on the left side again is the discount rate. That's that weighted average cost of capital. This particular example, starting with 50% capacity, a 20% buffer, 10% annual price performance improvement, which is a typical GreenLake price band year-by-year differential, discount rate of 8%, which is very typical. What that generates is about a 35% difference in cost between the GreenLake situation and buying the whole thing up front. The three legs of the stool work together to create that 35% difference. But I think if you play with the numbers, you can see that this is just kind of common sense. There's no way that you can't save money using these principles and taking advantage of the marketplace. I think GreenLake does the best job of any as-a-service approach in the marketplace capturing this for customers. In addition, GreenLake has a lot of other benefits built into it. And I'll leave Bruce to talk about some of those around, particularly around the portal, the management of it, the IT costs it's going to save you. I talked about kind of that shared responsibility of keeping the platform alive. And finally, the thing I wanted to also make you aware of, outside of acquiring, you know, equipment for new projects or replacements that you're doing, we have the capability in GreenLake to expand it to incorporate your existing assets. And we can even make your whole environment more effective. And we can do it in two ways. I introduce you to two acronyms today, AUS, which stands for Asset Upcycling Services, and SLB. SLB you might have heard of, it's sale leaseback. It's more of a finance term. But AUS we use for IT equipment that you have sitting around that you want to dispose of. We can do that automatically in the GreenLake agreement, where we have terms in the agreement where if you want to at any point in time, you can turn them in. We have two asset recycling centers. One is in Andover, Massachusetts, the other one in Erskine, Scotland. Technology renewal centers, we call them. Between the two of them, they handle about 25,000 tons of IT assets a year. They're very large, the scale of them very large. We handle a lot of assets coming back. And 90% of those we find a home for in what we call the circular economy. When we find a home for, you know, using that asset at another customer or another country, because of our global scope, we have that kind of footprint and we can do that. So the other 10% we recycle, dispose of, you know, properly and responsibly, make sure that the whole operation is eco-friendly and all of that. So that's part of GreenLake as well. The green in GreenLake is that AUS kind of capability. And if you have assets that out there that you want to keep using, but you would like to maybe meter them, maybe just upgrade them, but keep using the assets that you have, we can acquire those assets from you, give you cash for those things. And we don't pay market value for those, we pay your book value for those. For example, we had a government, a public sector customer county in California, who's one of our reference sites for this. but we acquired their existing storage, upgraded it, put the whole thing on a GreenLake agreement. They in turn are using that now that they have a monthly metered kind of service as their cost basis. They can kind of pass that service through and have become a service bureau for a couple of adjoining counties, providing them storage services at a per unit cost because of that. But they got a healthy check, $750,000 for their existing storage environment. That because they're a public sector customer, of course, they can't take that money. But we worked out a deal with our partner in the game, which would be Advizex in this case, set up an escrow account, and they use that money in the escrow account to pay the GreenLake bill. So they're not actually even paying for the service. It's being paid out of an escrow account that came from the proceeds of us putting their existing storage environment into the GreenLake contract. So we can do some wonderfully creative things, really taking advantage of lots of the financial elements of this and putting it all together. GreenLake is a wonderful solution for doing that, best in class. And I want to bring Bruce Feldman, to kind of talk a little bit more about GreenLake and some of the more basic concepts here. Thank you again for your time today. And thanks to Advizex, really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. So folks, I think you've heard a lot about GreenLake. I mean, HPE has named their infrastructure as a service, GreenLake. And GreenLake is an experience. It's the cloud that comes to you. That's our sort of marketing mantra, if you will. The cool thing about GreenLake is, and the intent of GreenLake is that it gives you the best of both worlds, both from a public cloud as well as a traditional capital kind of expense. And it's meant to give you the cloud experience, such as the flexibility that John mentioned earlier, the monthly expense type billing, but it's also meant to, and this is where it's the best of both worlds, it allows you to use the equipment, direct the equipment, control the equipment, and have security of the equipment as if it's run by you, which it can be on your own site. So the whole idea is that GreenLake provides you an infrastructure as a service based on a monthly expense, as I mentioned before. There's no capital outlay up front. It's billed in arrears, actually. It's your pricing is determined at the beginning and shown to you what it'll be for the term of the contract. And as John mentioned, as you grow, the pricing goes down. So from those perspectives, it's just like the public cloud. So it's all predefined, set for the term. You pay as you go. You can flex up and flex down based on your usage, yet you're in control, and it's on a it's on your premise or in a colo, that you define. When we implement it, it's meant to be implemented from edge to cloud, and that be whether it's public cloud or private cloud. There's a self-service component, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes. I've already mentioned that it's pay per use based on your utilization, based on monthly billing. You can flex up and flex down, as I mentioned, and you can determine how it's managed. It can be managed by you. It can be managed by your partner Advizex, or it can be managed by us at HPE. Next slide, please. So GreenLake as a platform is not only, it really gets defined by you and your partner Advizex and us as HPE. We work together to determine what the right use case is, workload is, and what gets put on your floor. And your floor, again, can be on your premise or in a colo. At the very, very minimum, GreenLake is hardware, where HPE is responsible, and or Advizex, frankly, is responsible for keeping it up and running. And we present you with the minimum amount of hardware, and then the variable, which John earlier called the buffer. So we put on there anywhere from 20 to 40% more than what your initial anticipated need is. And based on your monthly utilization, whether it be month-end processing or, in the event that you're in some sort of retail market and the holidays, whatever your basic daily needs are, that's what you get billed for, your basic usage. And you can literally flex up and flex down to what that minimum commitment is. So the whole idea here, as John mentioned, is we put on the floor what you minimally need, and then also put on a variable and buffer to allow you to grow into and out of so that it's flexible for you, and it's optimized based on what we as your partners, HPE, Advizex, and yourselves, determine your workload and your use case is going to be. We can also include software in it if you choose to, or you can provide the software. And as I mentioned earlier, we can also do managed services, or Advizex can do managed services. One of the cool things in our secret sauce, if you will, and if you're interested, Advizex or HPE can demo this to you at a later time, is we have something called GreenLake Central, which is really a platform. It's a dashboard that not only allows you to manage the environment, but it also allows you to, and it provides you business analytics, in that you can look in the rearview mirror to see what happens, so that you know literally on an hourly or daily basis what your costs are and what your utilization is, and frankly who utilized it, and it does show back as well if you set it up appropriately. But it also allows you to look into the future based on current and previous usage, what your anticipated growth will need to be, or when you will grow, and do one of those change orders that that John was talking about. The other thing that's really cool about GreenLake Central is it has a component where you can actually monitor your public cloud along with your GreenLake cloud, if you want to think of it that way. So it has hooks into Azure and AWS and soon to be Google, where you can look at it from a single platform, a single dashboard, and understand what your costs are, rather than waiting till the end of the month and getting a 40 or 50-page invoice and having to dig into it. There's also security that can be built into, and compliance that can be built into GreenLake Central if you choose. And this is becoming very important to a lot of different companies based on what their compliancy requirements are, whether they be healthcare, or financial, or even some other security compliances that the company's CISO, the security officer, would put on them. So all this is wrapped around with GreenLake Central. That's our secret sauce, if you will, and we'd love to demo it for you. Next slide, please. And the reason that we've brought GreenLake to market, and there's a lot of financial reasons that John talked about earlier, but if you listen to some of the industry consultants, in this case, what's depicted here is an IDC report that talks about what has gone to cloud and what has public cloud and what has not, and why. And what we're finding is that upwards of 70% of the applications out there are remaining on premises for a lot of different reasons that are discussed here. But and I've already mentioned security and compliancy and control and those kind of things, but also the data integrations and interdependencies between other applications have made it very prohibitive for you to pick up a single or even some multiple applications and put them to the cloud. So when you listen to IDC and Gartner and some of the other industry consultants, they're saying what's easily moved to the cloud has already gone there. And a lot of customers are looking for that cloud experience, but still want to maintain their control and security. And that's what GreenLake provides them. Excuse me. Go ahead, next slide. GreenLake is what you want it to be. And what I mean by that is, it's very flexible. It can start at a bare bones hardware, bare bones metal kind of environment where it's just compute and storage, and you determine how you run it and what applications and workloads you put on it. Or in conjunction with Advizex, we can also work with you on your workloads, and we can make it a platform as a service so that we can run all the way up the stack, your SAP environment or your Epic environment. But GreenLake's being used for all these different types of workloads and use cases, from bare metal all the way up the stack. And the other thing, while I'm mentioning it, is a lot of people will ask, well, how about horizontal or verticals? What does it typically go for? And the crazy thing is it goes to all of them. We have education, we have healthcare, we have financial. John mentioned public sector, a municipality. We've got manufacturing, both public and, both discrete and I'm lost for the word, process manufacturing. So it's crazy that all different use cases, all different kinds of environments, horizontal and vertical, are being used for GreenLake. And again, the secret sauce that runs it all is that GreenLake Central. What we're hearing from our, next slide please, what we're hearing from our customers along those lines is they need the environment and build it out, please, John. They need the environment so that they can react to the market quickly. They need that speed, and they need the ability to flex up and flex down, and they need to do it in a cost-contained kind of venture where they know what their costs are going to be, so that they can use the money that they would have typically spent in the traditional model where it's an upfront capital outlay. They can use that money, you know, since cash is king, especially right now, you know, they can use that money to drive other parts of their business and drive even more of the financial end. Next slide, please. So one of the things that Advizex and HPE is offering out of this is to help you with, you know, your future, your venture, and offer a workshop that we can do to discuss business strategy and what your use cases are and your workloads, and look at your business expectations, your objectives of your business, what challenges you have, the success that you want to have out of it, and also, you know, how are you going to get there? So we have a workshop, a business workshop, and a workload workshop that's roughly 3 to 4 hours, and it's broken down into, you know, the business needs, what your solutioning or workload or your use case needs, and then what our recommendations are based on everything that we learned through that workshop. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the focus on business strategy as the workshop, and you know, these are some of the things that we will discuss as topics of these sessions. How they're driven in your organization, and what's appropriate for your organization. So the business strategy, what the crux of your business need is and why you have this business need, how you handle the financials as a company and for the specific workload or solution or use case that you're talking about here as part of this workshop, what you're trying to solve for, and frankly, how you think you should get there, and then we will offer you how we think you should get there as well. And then how do you evaluate the different options? We help you with that too. Sometimes the answer is going to be public cloud. Other times the answer is going to be traditional. And sometimes it might be GreenLake and the best of both worlds, like I mentioned. And then obviously how you define success is going to be very important to you. Next slide, please. So we can also drill down on an assessment of a specific workload or use case to discuss the ins and outs of the application, where it should be, what speeds and feeds you need from it, but also how you're going to implement it and manage it and what results you want out of it. And the cool thing about this is Advizex and HPE is offering to do this workshop for you today. And we'll give you a contact at the end if you're interested in going through that. I'm not going to go through all these different bullets, but these are the content items that we talk about in the workshop so that we make sure that we understand your environment, we understand what your need is, and we understand what your outcome is intended to be. Next slide, please. One of the things that, if it's appropriate, we do is we actually give you a suggested solution or a possible solution. And we go into and we review the business case based on the workshop. We compare it to an as-a-service or traditional model, as you'll see here. Some of these numbers are very appropriate given John's discussion about present value and future value and return on investment. But we walk you through that and we provide you information about the specific workload and implementation that we've discussed with you at length, and compare it to a traditional model to see which is a better option for you and how you want to move ahead. So the whole idea is, by the way, is based on Forrester's return on investment and cost of ownership study. So we're not using our numbers and made up things that we've done. We're using an industry consultant to compare it to. Next slide. And one of the other things that we do is we discuss the business benefits with you and what the outcome will be overall. So using the Forrester study, we again, we being Advizex and HPE are ready, willing, and able to provide you a workshop and an assessment. And with that, Steve is going to talk a little bit about how we would go about doing that and how to move on from just talking about it to actually doing something about it. Steve?
Okay, great, thanks. So my background moved. I just want to let everybody know I commuted from the conference room to my office. But as I did that, I was reading a little bit of my Vest Pocket MBA according to John's presentation. So
I looked at the classified balance sheets, the statements of cash flows, the statements of the analysis and questions of cash flow, the analysis. So I did all my homework while John was speaking. Here's the deal, though. This book is about this thick, talking about cash flows and financial statements, and it's a little MBA. I'm not here for the advertisement of that because we're not giving that away today. But the important pieces here to remember is the financial benefits. One thing that we did not allude to here is all of this, if I talk a little bit about technology and from an operational perspective, all of this is managed from one central pane of glass. And one thing that I'd like to speak about is something that we call GreenLake Central. So that is an enterprise platform that manages the entire solution, and based on a utility type of modeling, can help across the scalability, the performance, the billing, the operational aspects, the capacity, and you're able to do this through executive views, administration views, different views within the environment so that you can lock people out. And oh, by the way, we can also do that all for you and allude to when we hit the 80%, 100%, or whatever thresholds in the environment, whether that be from CPU, whether that be from applications, or whether that be from storage. So couple items here. Manage the cash flow within your environment. There's never anything more important than that. I have to do that for my wife at home. I can free up capital expenses looking at a GreenLake or consumption IT solution. Pay for what I use. Pay for what I use. I'm going to put 100% on the floor, but I only pay 80%. Who can't take that benefit right off the bat? I don't care what solution in the world you're looking for. If I can guarantee you the performance and the scalability, then take advantage of that type of modeling through consumption IT. Deliver the cloud experience. We're all being asked that. IDC, Gartner, your own environments, the executive offices, deliver the cloud experience. Well, we can deliver the cloud experience through an on-prem or hybrid IT solution. So the edge to cloud all comes to you. I thank everybody for joining today. I'm going to leave this open for a couple minutes in case there are questions. And if there's not, we'll answer any chats or any of the questions. But I do want to say that you will receive this presentation so that you don't have to open your little MBA book like I did. And we'll do a couple things here. Tori will be able to answer any of your email requests, whether it be a quick quote, whether it be an assessment, whether it be a workshop, whether it just be questions, on the presentation today. So I thank all of you. We're going to open the lines. I think we're opening them right now. So be careful if you're drinking the whiskey or there's a dog in your background or what have you. But I thank all of you kindly. I'm going to be silent for about 20, 30 seconds. We'll allow anybody to ask any questions. If you're too bashful, reach out to us after this. And I thank each and every one of you for joining our call today. Tori, I'll leave it to you when we open the lines and close the lines. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you. Yeah, I've gone ahead and unmuted everybody. For anybody that does have any questions, feel free to chime in here. Also, yes, please reach out to me with any questions, anything you might need from this presentation today. I'm happy to help out. To everyone that attended, as Steve said, thank you so much for attending. You all should be receiving a nice bottle of bourbon. Hopefully, I'm thinking next week it'll be there, but shipping's kind of crazy right now. So if you haven't received your cups yet, they should be coming as well. So please let me know, and I'm happy to get them out to you as soon as possible.
Well, Tori, what we do for the bourbon there, we just age it another extra week to show how satisfied we are with everybody that attended here. So thank you for aging that for 1 more week. Perfect. That's
exactly it. You're right, Steve. I should have let them know we were aging it longer. That's right.
So Steve, one of the questions that we typically get is, how do we start, right? And obviously one of the starts is to work with Advizex, but also from a technology and a workload perspective, we can do a whole data center, we can do, compute and storage, but a lot of times customers will just pick one technology that they want to start with based on what their need is. A lot of times it's storage because of the growth of storage and those kind of things. So that's something that people typically ask. And there's other times that these things make more sense, especially now. We talked about cash being king, and they customers wanting to use capital for other things, or keeping capital in the bank. So there's the case here where they don't have to come up with a capital outlay up front, or it's a monthly service expense, as John was talking about. So it's not a long-term commitment from the standpoint, or not a short-term commitment from the standpoint of having cash and taking it out and paying it down. And then obviously refreshes and moving data centers and those kind of things are good startup kind of applications for infrastructure as a service in GreenLake specifically. Hopefully that spawned maybe a couple other questions from someone in the crowd here.
I have a question. What if I only had, let's say, $200,000 to spend? Could I use that would that be enough for the GreenLake to start?
Absolutely. We start as small as roughly $50,000 or $75,000, but that's over the term of the contract. That's over the 3 or 4 or 5 years. That $50,000 implementation is really only about $1,800 a month or something along those lines. It's we can do a 30 or 40 terabyte kind of storage environment for something that small. Thanks for the question. I hope I answered it.
Yeah, you did. Thanks. But what if it grows, and let's say our division, we end up buying another company that is bigger, and I need to grow it? How would that work?
We have a change order process in place, and we would sit down with you along with Advizex and determine what that growth is needed to be, or what it can be projected to be. And we work on building out a change order either for your existing environment or adding to a new environment. One of the nice things about this is there's a single statement of work in place, and we can add change orders in a matter of days or weeks, depending on the shipping.
Great, thank you.
So you bring up a good point. A lot of use cases are around customers that are into merging and acquiring other companies and growing from that perspective, and not necessarily knowing what their growth is going to be, just that they're going to grow. And this is a very nice way to do it, especially given that we set up the contract up front. We, for the existing equipment and the existing technologies, all the pricing is predetermined and it's billed monthly. There isn't a huge cash outlay that the company wants to use. They want to use that money to acquire another company, not necessarily plunk down on IT expense, let's say.
And I think Bruce, just an added component there, and then we'll just leave this open for another 30 seconds or so. I think is let's think about workloads and applications and not infrastructure. And let's think about the business outcome of what's needed from that workload and application. So when we think about applications, we think of things such as SAP. We think of things such as Epic in healthcare. We think of things such as VDI and expansion of VDI. And why don't we service VDI? Because of the work from home and the remote workforces today. Back in the day, we may have had 300 clients on a VDI application, but today, because we have remote workforces, we've grown that to 3,500. So let's look at the expansions and growth and the scalability of such things as SAP, Epic, VDI, and really focus on the workload and application in a project-based scenario that makes sense to all. Not something you want to put in the public cloud for some obvious reasons, and then allow Epic to be, an Epic application in healthcare, allow it to be Epic as a service, or let it be SAP as a service, or let it be VDI as a service. So we're getting to the model of everything as a service and not just infrastructure as a service. So thank you for that, everybody, and we'll leave the lines open. Okay, Tori, I think we're good. I thank each and every one of you. We look forward to future conversations, and any questions, please let us know. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thanks, Steve.